Hi again, this is the second part of our chapter 3. We begin with a reminder that after we finish reading chapter 3, there will be an exam on chapters 1 to 3 and everything will be specified on Blackboard. So we continue discussing print media, books, newspapers, and magazines from chapter 3 of our textbook. So, speaking of books, why do books matter? Books are a technology that transfers information and also provides entertainment. People love to read because people are hardwired to enjoy storytelling, but they also appreciate information because in this day and age, we need to know what's happening around us. Books represent cultural symbols, an object of value that you can give as a gift. One of the earliest forms of mass media. They maintain a historical value as well. There are antique books, there are museum books. Books are a place where we preserve ideas, and physical libraries are a symbol of the repository of that knowledge. And if a person reads a lot, we say that the person is educated. So culturally, reading is connected to being educated. How about digital reading? So, studies have found that e-reading seems to help young, reluctant readers start to enjoy reading and increase how much they enjoy reading over time. Scrolling seems to disrupt our understanding abilities of what we read, but studies are not very clear on that. So, there are variations of to what degree scrolling disrupts our understanding of the reading. And print reading seems to help us retain information, to remember it longer. But that part also needs a little more research to actually be true. Some people just prefer paper over digital forms of reading, just like the term vinyl has come back now. People are saying vinyl records are better, but when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, we did not call it vinyl. We called them records. I think this is a line from a comedy. So paper has a tactile quality. It has a smell, a touch, a sight, and maybe a taste. Who knows? Paper forms are slow and require a different level of concentration. This invites a feeling of rest and immersion into the imaginary, and so you can take your time and read on a beach instead of rushing through information as we do when we're online, and especially if we're multitasking. Okay, so what is a newspaper actually? A newspaper is another early form of mass media, and it became popular as soon as humanity learned how to print large amounts of paper product quickly and distribute it cheaply. So the penny press stems from the idea of spending little and reaching a wide audience. Designed to keep people informed in local, national, and world news regularly, daily, weekly, monthly. So the golden era of newspapers started in 1830, ended in 1930, when lots of innovations and access happened in the sphere of newspaper publishing. And why did it end in the 1930s? This is a question I want to post here. I want to put it out. Why did it end? And if you read the textbook carefully, I assume it will tell you that the 1930s is a time when radio started booming. So people want access to important information, and the purpose of that is to help citizens make informed decisions about their lives and their political or economic choices. So there are a number of problems connected to publishing. The first problem is newspaper publishing chains threaten the quality of news, and on pages 76 to 79, your textbook explains how that works. In just a couple of words, I can say that when revenue is the number one concern for newspaper companies, who also own other forms of media and sometimes other forms of output. Let's say hypothetically, let's exaggerate a little bit, newspaper company is owned by a conglomerate who also makes weapons. So do you think that informing the citizens objectively and fairly would be their first and foremost goal? Well, media studies research has shown that concentration, conglomeration, is actually a negative factor in the output of news, of fair news. The second problem is so-called fake news, and why do they exist? Well, we all know, because nowadays we all have access to social media, and there is no editorial process towards it. There is none, and everyone can post whatever seems plausible or implausible. No, there's no one out there to check. No one is paid to produce news, so there is no level of responsibility. And from my perspective as a former journalist, no one is actually trained to deliver news in a professional manner, in a balanced manner, but people just share whatever they find interesting or whatever they like, and that allows fake news to exist in society. Fake news harms society because it provides faulty information that affects our ability to make good decisions, and it feeds our cognitive bias. It leads to mistakes in our thinking, evaluating, remembering information. The result of holding onto one's preferences and beliefs regardless of contrary information is considered cognitive bias in psychology, and this is another question that will be on our exam. So what is the future of newspapers, you might ask? Newspapers already exist in digital form, and so do magazines. So let's just focus on magazines for a moment. What are magazines? They're traditionally bound periodicals that come out less frequently than newspapers, and they have the luxury of including longer articles than newspapers, more visuals, better quality visuals, but they're still smaller than books. So they're made for a different audience, and very defined one, of fashion, home decorating, cooking, sports. So the audience is more fragmented in magazines, whereas books are for everybody. Although there are professional books for a specific audience, especially scientific and educational, but books and magazines are different in that sense, because magazines can really segment or fragment their audiences too narrowly. So much of what magazines used to provide now appears on social media channels, and people don't feel the need to go to magazines anymore. And there is a very serious decline in magazines. So again, whatever you get from a magazine, visuals, conversation, interviews, advice, information on every aspect of life, you can get from online media. So, as a summary, when we introduce a new technology into our culture always changes. As a result, we see how reading can affect society. And print media changes with the technology. It still has a big impact on our society, but it's a different kind of impact nowadays. So we read in different ways. I prefer my Kindle. You may prefer your phone. The ways print media affects our culture is changing with technology and with the spread of convergent media. So I think we will just take a moment to think about it. And as I said at the end of our last conversation, chapter 3, part 1, we will do an exercise asking one another how we read, what was our favorite book, that kind of conversation among peers. So for that, we will need a partner, and I will facilitate that conversation electronically. As we discussed, nowadays everything is electronic. So please stay tuned, and thank you for listening.